Thanks for everybody joining. We've got 42 participants, which is a nice collective number of people looking around racial justice at work. We have a task at hand, and I think that everybody involved in this webinar has a particular interest and vested interest. So I'm very pleased that there are this number of people involved. So I'd like to welcome you to this forum this evening. We have a number of speakers that are going to give some of their experiences around racial justice at work. The first speaker that I want to introduce is ImKann from the SUL, Scottish Union Learning, who will speak to you about how to get involved in encouraging some of our Black workers to empower themselves around about equalities training, but I think also importantly to find allies within our communities. I'll introduce myself very quickly. My name is Gozi. I've worked with the STUC Black Workers Committee for 9 years, and activism and equalities is a fundamental aspect of what I've been prioritizing over that time. So we're going to hear from STUC official, Scottish Union Learning Officer, ImKann. We're then going to hear from our chair from the STUC Black Workers Committee, Usman Ali. We're then going to hear from Charmaine Blasio, who's a Unison Black Workers and Ethnic Minority Resilience Network Officer. And then from Mohammed Asif, who's the Director of the Afghan Human Rights Foundation, and also from Rosa Sahil, who I've had the pleasure to meet and work with over some years. She is a member of Unite, and she's one of the Glasgow Girls and a human rights activist. I think it's really important at this time that we take stock of race equality and what that means in terms of not just a global context, but very much a local context with regards to Scotland, with regards to the west of Scotland, with regards to the areas that we live and work in and we contribute to. So I'm very keen to hear all of your contributions this evening. So at this moment, I'll hand over to Ewan. Ewan.
Okay, thanks Cozy for that introduction there. I'm Ewan. I work for Scottish Union Learning around fair work and equalities. I'm not going to take up too much time, but I just wanted to take a moment to speak to you about some of the opportunities we have for trade union equality reps who play a vital role, even more so now. So firstly, we're developing our equality rep network, which is essentially what sounds like a network of reps from around Scotland who meet up on a quarterly basis to share good practice, common challenges, and discuss any learning needs that they might have. So from these sessions, we've been able to organise a variety of different courses, including learning around employment law, equalities legislation, But it's really up to the reps what they want to do. But it's a great development opportunity to get involved in, and it does tend to be popular. We normally have a guest speaker come along to speak about key equalities issues. And our next session is going to be on October 1st from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. And we'll be having a short session from Show Racism the Red Card. So if you do want to sign up to that, please just drop me an email at emclaren@stuc.org.uk, or go onto the Scottish Union Learning website where there's a little bit more information about that as well. On top of this, we also have an Equality Rep Network Facebook group, which is again great for reps to share good practice and speak about common problems, successes and challenges. And we also have a great resource zone for equality reps on our website, which you can check out. And we try to update that regularly, with resources that are of use to reps. And right now as well, we're working with the STUC to offer a podcast around equalities, which will directly help reps. But if I can ask one thing, it's that if you're watching this webinar and you feel passionate about doing something around equalities, please get in touch with your union, get active and become an equality rep. Because particularly with the current situation where inequality is ever increasing, we need people in workplaces who have that knowledge, and we need people in workplaces who have them skills to tackle some of these inequalities. So please contact your union, get active and join our Equality Rep network. Thank you. I'll pass back to Gozi now.
Thanks very much, Ewan. I think those were all very sort of succinct messages, well said. We will have a question and answer session a wee bit later on. So by all means, if you have questions for Ewan and for any of the other speakers, then do note them down, and we can take note of them through the course of the session. I think Ewan is correct in that, you know, we need to look at what the resources are available from our trade union affiliates and the STUC particularly to support us during this time. So moving on, I believe we now have Usman, who is the chair of the STUC Black Workers Committee, who can give an overview of the work that we've been doing, particularly during this year with regards to the response to the pandemic. Usman.
Thank you, Gozi. Good evening, Scotland. My name is Usman Ali, and I'm the chair of the STUC Black Workers Committee. Coronavirus has impacted all of us, irrespective of who we are, where we come from, or where we live in Scotland. It's impacted the STUC and our operations in terms of how the equality committees are operating. This is why we have decided that the webinars across all our committees are going to be essential, and I'm pleased that the STUC Black Workers Committee is kicking us off tonight with this one on racial inequalities across Scotland. Scotland's black workers and black trade unionists is who our committee is set up to represent and work for. We are working for you, your co-workers, your family members. We want to create a fairer, equal and just Scotland for all. The STUC Black Workers Committee has been very busy of late, doing a couple of things. Yes, responding to COVID-19, but also remembering the motions from our 2019 conference and taking forward our work plan in bid and in supporting of that view of creating a fairer, equal and just Scotland for all. So to give you some highlights of what we've done so far, we've been working with the Scottish Government, with the Scottish Parliament, making sure our views are known with decision makers and politicians and in the media. We've been working with local authorities and public bodies. We've been working with employers, trade unions and employees, keeping our ear to the ground. working for you on them things that matter to you, your co-workers and your families. We've been issuing letters and making statements. When workers at Waverley Care were threatened with redundancy and unfair work practices, we stepped in and said something. When DFID and the Foreign and Commonwealth Office merged earlier this month, we stepped in and told the UK government how wrong a decision this was and the impact this was going to have, not just for Black and minority ethnic people here at home, but right across the world. When the SQA was caught up in the latest debacle around exam results, we stood up for Black and minority ethnic young people and made sure that the impact on them was clearly stated and that right was soon done by them. In the recent programme for government issued by the Scottish First Minister, there were 48 mentions of Black and minority ethnic communities and actions related to helping them. We welcome that, but we know more needs to be done. On coronavirus, we've stepped in to make our views known on the need for better data. We've been working with the Scottish Government on trying to issue a statement in relation to fair work and race. We've been lobbying the Scottish Government to decolonise Scotland's curriculum and Scotland's cities. We've been working to take action and highlight the needs and plight of refugees and asylum seekers. We've been working with partners such as Bemis Scotland on their equality network and resilience networks. And we've been engaging the Scottish Government every time that we can. Moreover, our committee has a Break the Race Ceiling campaign, particularly important during this context. Our campaign highlights right across the Scottish public sector. The Scottish public sector, 150 organisations, but we have been putting the microscope on them all to ask how many Black and minority ethnic workers are part of their workforce and how many are part of the senior and strategic roles. We know lots of work needs to be done, and this committee is committed to doing that work. We've had a 30% response rate, and we're working with many of those organisations now to produce tailored plans that will actually make change happen. We also know that Islamophobia and racism are on the rise, and that's why we need targeted approach, not just in workplaces and communities, but here in the Scottish trade union movement as well. The committee is now working to develop an Islamophobia strategy for trade unions right across the Scottish trade union movement. We thank those who have taken part in the consultation process, and we ask you to keep in touch with us so that you are up to date with our work going forward. Thank you.
Gozi, you're muted. Could you unmute yourself, please? Thanks.
Sorry, there we go. We are in very, unique times, and I think it's important that we take stock of potential inequalities that might increase over time. So I think Usman has outlaid what the work of the STUC Black Workers Committee is doing to focus on some of that, and that will be prioritised through the course of at least the next year and beyond. So I'm very pleased to be involved in the committee so that we can make sure that Black workers, who are not only Black workers, but they are people who are involved in communities and they're involved in families, etc., that they can have the support that the STUC and the trade union movement can give to them to wrap around what is a very unique period of time, I would say. So thank you, Usman, for that. I would just add to that that one of the asks that we've had from the Scottish government is around data collection and trying to ensure that we know what the impact of COVID-19 has been on Black and minority ethnic communities in Scotland. We're still waiting to get that defined as a baseline. And until you know your baseline, it's difficult to then make a strategy. But have heart, we're still working towards those outcomes, and hopefully we'll see some development soon. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Charmaine Blasio from the Unison Black Workers and Ethnic Minority Resilience Network. She's going to give an insight into her work with the Unison Black Workers and her role in the development of the Ethnic Minority Resilience Network and the work that this particular network has been doing in supporting Black and ethnic minority communities.
Oh, thank you, Gozi, and thank you to STUC for inviting me to give an insight of my personal experience of being involved with the Scottish Black Members Committee in Unison, and also my involvement with the Ethnic Minority National Resilience Network. So we know a lot of attention, and even some of the reason why this seminar, this webinar is taking place is because of inequality that has taken a global perspective, just like COVID-19. And I just used the starting slide of an interpretation that my nephew created when we did a session about understanding what discrimination is about and what is involved in understanding oppression and how could we fight it, how could we move on from it. So, oops. Yeah. So, as I said, I initially got involved in the union just as a passive union member. I was busy finishing my PhD, taking care of my family, and working as well. So I wasn't very active in the union. And towards handing in my assignment, I was inspired by my friend Tamisa in Sheffield, who was quite active and was actually like writing her nominations for positions in the union. And I said, you know what, let me find an organizing group within Unison that I can join. And that's how I got started to get involved in the Scottish Black Members Committee. So I'm the education officer of the Scottish Black Members Committee. And through Unison's involvement with BMIS as well, they wanted a representation there. So one of the things I wanted to share about union, being involved in a union and activism, is 3 things we need to do. It's get involved, train up, and show up. And I'm glad that Ewan and Usman have mentioned that as well, that in order for us to make change or for anything to happen, we have to get involved. So I would recommend getting involved with your local branch and any self-organizing groups that interest you, whether it's women or disabled or LGBT+, any group that you think you could provide value, and then become accredited, because that's how you're able to now start supporting other colleagues in a meaningful way. and you start educating yourself, and you could become a steward, a health and safety officer. I heard you on with a call for equalities officers, so there is room, especially for BME workers. We need to increase our representation. Our representation in the union does not even reflect our representation in the population in Scotland. So there's an area that we can get involved in. And so now I'm a accredited steward and also an equalities officer within my branch. And then show up. So you have everything, and then you don't attend anything. So attend networking days. If there's a membership drive going on in your organization, take some time off. And then when you become accredited, you also would have facilitation time. So you don't have to worry about getting time off from work. You could also negotiate for that. And you can attend conferences. I was able to present a motion and support a motion at a national conference for Black workers. It's an excellent networking opportunity. Those are some of the benefits. And also Professor Jeff Palmer talks about system consciousness. And when you get involved in your union, in your organization, you begin to understand how your organization works, who are the key players, and then you can make strategic decisions. You can be more strategic in how you apply for positions, to improve your hours or so. And that was one of the reasons why I became more active, because I felt that I was not being treated justly. I was applying for jobs, applying for promotions, and just getting pushed back. And being involved in the Black Members Committee really helped me to be able to advocate and to be more strategic. And I was able to secure even increased hours within my organization and also a promotion in another organization. So being involved in activism and trade union helps. You have opportunities for personal growth and also personal development. So I just wanted to just share this slide from Liz and Molly from one of the books that's on, when we get involved in the workplace and we get involved in networking and meeting more people, then we become more visible. And the more visible we are, then we could have a seat at the table and our voice will start being heard. And what Usman was saying, with the trade union, you were able to send to Scottish Parliament, to work with Scottish Parliament, to send letters, to ask, to request information. So it is important to really understand why you are involved in the trade union movement. But we have life, and this is our life as Black BME workers or any worker in the world right now. We have COVID-19, but we have other things. And one of the things that BME workers have to face is racism, the police brutality, and all the other things that other people are facing. So how do we cope with this? And I just wanted to share the involvement in Unison and working with BMIS. And this is my spaghetti plan. Yes, so we have the pandemic and we have COVID-19, we have infections and deaths happening. And who is it affecting? We need for that to be investigated further. As Usman was saying, that data, even Gozi was saying that we don't have proper data, as the results that came back from NRS Scotland, they couldn't really evidence how many African and African Caribbean people died as a result of COVID because the data wasn't reliable. So we really need to be, our data keeping, our data collection needs to be more robust. And I've seen in the program for government, in one of the actions, that's one of the actions, to have a more robust system for collecting data across all protected characteristics, but particularly about ethnicity. So, but one of the things within Unison, one of the first things, and was a big trigger for a lot of activity, was that the first 100 people that died, health professionals that died, 70% came from BME community. And Unison did a survey of 2,000 workers, of which over 200 were from BME. And the results were not good results. And there was a lot of fear amongst workers, fear of dying, fear of infecting their families, fear of not having safe equipment to work. work with, and fear of speaking up and advocating to have safe gear to work safely. So two of the key things that came out from that survey was that bad jobs kill and fair work saves lives. And that's what we're about, saving life. And we need life, we need to be alive to continue working, to take care of our families, and the effect that it will have on our environment and on the society. We have also been able to do a COVID-19 Race Equality Action Plan, which advocates for safe work for all. We also had webinars talking about racial justice, and that racism is a public health issue. It's a health issue as well. And it's just the structural inequalities in our system. The Scottish government has responded by producing a race assessment protocol that's available, and organizations have to adhere to it, or should be adhering to it. So my involvement with BMS, with the National Resilience Network, there's a subcommittee on work and on workers' rights and economic recovery. And within that subcommittee, we have identified that we know that there is the race assessment protocol, but is it being implemented? Is it being executed? So we have sent out information requests to all health boards, asking for an ethnic breakdown according to the Scottish Health Census. So we want to see how many workers have had their risk assessments done, and the outcomes. So, and that's broken down so that we can get an idea of what's happening in the workplace. We can also get an idea of compliance. So is that feedback loop. We have also supported other organizations within the network. When there was the outbreak in Aberdeenshire area, we supported one of the charities there to make sure that there was a collaborative approach and there was joint working in resolving that situation. BMS also has emergency grants for communities affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. So those are some of the interventions that have been done. So as I say, fair work saves lives, and that is where the racial justice, when we have racial justice, we have fairer work and a safer workplace for all. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Charmaine, for that. There are some key points, that have come out of that. I think Black members' participation at trade union level is obviously a key indicator, a key factor in being able to move forward with organising. I'm just going to go into the chat box now. There's a few. There are a few comments that have come in through the chat box. So Alan Cowan from Dundee, there have been spikes in discrimination on grounds of race and disability since Brexit and COVID. Can you share any joint work on race with other strands? We might park that to the question and answer session. Julie Ferguson, good evening. As an equality rep, I'm nearly always asked about disability, occasionally maternity and paternity. Does SUL And Karina is asking if Charmaine can share the the presentation that she's just given to us, that would be really helpful. Kathleen Kennedy, where can we find out about Break the Ceiling campaign? And Carmen Simon, for Usman Ali, you mentioned a campaign to find out how many Black and ethnic minority people are in senior positions in the public sector. I didn't get the name of the campaign, so could you repeat it? So there are a number of entries in the chat box as well. So if people are able to access some of the information from the chat box, but obviously we'll come back to the question and answer session with some of those points. So thank you, Charmaine, and thank you to those who have put into the chat box. I'm going to move on to the third speaker, Mohammed Asif, who's the director of the Afghan Human Rights Organization, Human Rights Foundation, sorry. Mohammed.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for having me. Sorry, I'm just sitting in my car because I was going to be late when I got home. But anyway, it's nice to be here. But my job is mostly with asylum seekers and refugees, and I'm glad that my friend Rosa is there today. So she's quite well expert as well, and she's been campaigning. I have met her when she was only, you know, a very, very young girl years ago. If I start by saying that in Scotland, during the coronavirus crisis, I have seen so many refugee camps in my life, but this was the worst for asylum seekers and refugees, because there were a couple of reasons. And the reason was, you know, the accommodation provider, Mears, they decided to remove asylum seekers from their homes and decided to put them in the hotels. And there was also a problem when the coronavirus started, because there was no public transport. Suddenly, you know, most of the asylum seekers are Muslims. You know, things become very expensive. People had no money. People had no money to access the transport. They had no food. They have literally almost nothing. But then when we try to go around during the coronavirus crisis, even up to today we just distributed, you know, clothing to, you know, 183 people in Glasgow. But it's the system here in this country where the system is very biased and very unjust. When people tell me that the Home Office is a broken system, I don't really agree, because the Home Office is intentionally designed, you know, to humiliate and degrade and insult asylum seekers. That's how the British government, you know, designed the system, that when asylum seekers come here, then they're treated very unfairly, very unjustly. And then you have this, you know, the climate of fear and hate and the, you know, the created by the British state and the right-wing politician and the right-wing media. We, not long ago, we saw the far right, you know, going around from hotel to hotel in England, you know, harassing asylum seekers in their accommodation, and then coming on Facebook and other social media, telling people that the taxpayers' money has been spent on asylum seekers and they're living in hotels. Trust me, even today, I spoke to 2 asylum seekers and, you know, who live on Abist Hotel just on the start of Paisley Road West. And they told me that they're in the hotel since, you know, Ramadan. It's almost 6 months Ramadan has gone. And then they're still in that hotel. You know, people are sick and tired. They don't have access to the GP. They don't have access to mental health issues. They don't have access to, you know, so many other important issues. But when we are told, you know, it comes again to, you know, blaming asylums for all the failure in this country. Blaming migrants for every failure of the British state. When there is a recession, when there is problem with money, then asylum seekers and the migrants are blamed. Mostly asylum seekers are blamed. And I arrived here nearly 21 years ago as an asylum seeker from Afghanistan. 21 years ago, we were given £36.57p. 21 years later, asylum seekers get £37 and 57 pence a week. So the Home Office is so generous. Within 21 years, they have increased the allowance of asylum seekers just by £1. Imagine, 21 years ago, things were very cheap. And 21 years later, inflation is very high. Things are more expensive. There is not enough help and support available for asylum seekers. During the Corona crisis, a company called Mears, the subcontractor of the Home Office, decided to remove people and put them in the hotels. And the reason behind the removal was, financial. Because when Nicola Sturgeon in the Scottish government is telling us, and the scientists are telling us, don't go to crowded places, don't attend crowded areas, and try to be away from each other, they suddenly decided to put over 300 people in different hotels without any social distancing, without any proper facilities. Imagine if I tell you this, and this is true, and I have witnessed it. Asylum seekers in the Parkin Hotel, where sadly, many people were stabbed and an asylum seeker killed by the police, they did not even have drinking water. Imagine in 21st century, asylum seekers in that particular hotel did not have access to clean drinking water. They have to go to the bathroom or to the toilet tap, fill their cup or their bottle, whatever they have, because they were not given any water. And they have to fill their bottle or their cup or whatever facilities they had and drink the water from the toilet tub, inside the toilet. And then we went around to so many different hotels in Glasgow. We found one particular hotel, the Tartan Lodge, where the food were below substandard, and no right-minded person will eat that food. No disrespect to any food, but the food was just horrible. And asylum seekers were told, that's it. If you want to eat it, fine. If you don't want to eat it, it's up to you. And then when we appealed to the wonderful Scots and the Scottish people in this city, there were so many people, who were bringing food. We were called every day that how many times do you need food for asylum seekers? And this is very important. When Mercy Baguma died, imagine this, when you are given a new accommodation, you are out of temporary accommodation by the Mears or the Home Office contractor. You are not told which area of Glasgow you are going to. When Mercy Baguma's husband turned up at her flat because he thought that his wife or his partner or the girlfriend, she was going to be moved to another flat because that address is not revealed by the accommodation provider to an asylum seeker. So asylum seeker is told that you wait from 9 to 5, between 9 and 5 in the day, someone will turn up and will take you to the new accommodation. So when the husband turned up and he knocked on the door, he heard that, his baby was crying, but there was no sound. There was no reply from his wife until he called the police. And when the police broke in the door and they went inside and sadly saw, that asylum seeker died in her flat for whatever reasons. I do not want to speculate the reasons, but that is the system here intentionally designed. When people come and say, oh, it's a broken system, it's not broken. It's intentionally designed to humiliate and degrade and insult asylum seekers and refugees in this city. It was not only asylum seekers in these hotels. There were a lot of refugees who had, valid refugee status or visas in this country. But then, the city council does not have enough houses. But then the coronavirus struck, so there was nowhere people could go. I saw women and children stuck with adults. 2 minor asylum seekers, minors, 16 and 17, they were put in the Parkin Hotel with adults. In this country, I think, the social work system or the law of this country is that a minor is not allowed to be with adults in a hotel, and further with people, who are prone to, a lot of mental health issues, sickness, war-torn countries, PTSD, and so many other issues. But then again, coming to the hostile environment, we receive messages. Every time we put a post, we are told, if you don't like it, go back to your country. Many asylum seekers don't have a country. For example, Afghanistan, Iraq, Kurdistan, Syria, Libya, you have destroyed their countries. I'm sorry to say this, because the chair said that we shouldn't go into much, into politics, but it is related to politics. But Britain is involved in every major conflict. Britain is involved in Iraq, in Kurdistan, in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Libya, in Sudan, in Eritrea, in so many other countries. And most of the asylum seekers, you know, they see so many of us are coming here. You know, don't bomb many countries, so they will not come here. If you destroy their countries, where do you expect them to go? Not even, you know, 10,000 are coming here. Then you have the British politician coming on television telling you that we have been invaded. You know, Kent has been invaded by asylum seekers, or England has been invaded. You know, 6 people on a dinghy, is that an invasion? Have you seen an invasion, you know, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Kurdistan, in Libya, in Syria, where 1 million people died, and other countries, 3 million people died, in other countries, you know, many millions died, the country completely destroyed. That is an invasion. You know, 6 people, 100 people coming on a dinghy, that is not an invasion. And further to that, they are running away from your bombs. But when they come to this country, we have this hostile environment created by the British state, you know, telling the citizens of this country that, you know, we're full, we cannot cope. These people are bringing diseases, you know, they are bringing, you know, AIDS, sickness, cancer. Every single problem is blamed on asylum seekers and migrants. But my appeal to the people here in this country, in Scotland, sadly, asylum issue is a reserve issue, and the Scottish government doesn't have a power. But yet, this is the only country in the whole of Europe, the Scottish government, who openly support the plight of asylum seekers. Within 5 months, the past 5 months, 3 asylum seekers died. And we still haven't know, or we still do not know, why these 3 asylum seekers died. Okay, obviously one was killed by the police, 2 died in their flats, but we are not told. When we ask for an independent inquiry, we are told, you know, the Home Office is doing their own investigation. And, you know, it's been 6 months. You know, we are not told why people died in their flats, why people are not having enough money, why people are begging for clothes. Imagine, you know, clothes is a necessity. Each asylum seekers, you know, since this post is going to the public, and I would like to share this piece of information with the public. Each asylum seekers get £37 a week. If you're a single asylum seeker, you get £37, 57p from the Home Office. With that amount of money, you buy your own clothing, you buy your own food. If you have a solicitor appointment, £5 is gone by your bus ticket. If you have a hospital appointment, again, £5 for the bus fare. If you have the Home Office appointment, any other appointment, you know, you are not even left with £10. And I have literally seen, you know, I have never seen such poverty, as I said. I have been to Lesbos, I have been to Calais many times, and I have never seen such poverty in refugee camps. When I saw the poverty here during coronavirus, and even without the coronavirus, where asylum seekers really, really suffer. You know, in this country, asylum is not a crime. You know, Britain is the signatory to the Geneva Convention. You know, every single case has to be assessed, whether you like it, you don't like it. You know, it's not a crime. When you come to this country, you have every right to claim asylum. Once your claim is assessed, then that's a different issue. But until then, you know, people call us terrorists. They call us, illegal asylum seekers. There is no such illegal asylum seeker. You know, if you're an asylum seeker, you're an asylum seeker. You know, people have to differentiate between migration and the asylum seekers who are coming to this country. But luckily, we live in this city in Glasgow, and which I live, I'm sorry to say, this is a very, very nice city. You know, even today, as I said, people donated us clothes during the coronavirus and the COVID-19. We were, you know, given plenty of clothes by charities, one of the most social bites. We were given food, you know, other basic items. You know, these were all the generous Scots who went out from their homes and helped asylum seekers and helped others who needed it. But my appeal to everyone here, you know, don't be deceived by the British or the Home Office propaganda that Britain is invaded by asylum seekers. You know, Holland is a small country. It takes more asylum seekers than the United Kingdom. You know, Germany just now, you know, Lesbos, the Moria camp, which is totally destroyed by fire. Germany and France decided to take all the unaccompanied minors, you know, but Britain decided not to take even one single asylum seeker. You know, they're supposed to take 3,000 unaccompanied minors, but when Theresa May was the Prime Minister, you know, when Boris Johnson came, he abolished the entire, project or the entire idea of taking unaccompanied minors. Britain has moral responsibility to take asylum seekers, especially from those countries where Britain is actively until today involved, bombing their countries. So there's so many other issues, I can go on and on and on, but I would like to say thank you to the Black Workers Committee for bringing this important issue to the attention of the public. And I would like to say thank you to every panelist and everyone who is here today. And I'm very grateful to be a small part of today's event. And I have so much to say, but please, don't be deceived by the propaganda that we have collapsed the economy of Britain. We are responsible for the recession in Britain. We're responsible for every poverty in Britain. These were long there in this country. Asylum seekers are not collapsing your economy. It's not migrants who are collapsing the economy. It's the rich who are dodging, their fair share of taxes. It is the rich who are asking for bailouts. It's not the asylum seekers who are asking for bailouts. It is not the migrants who are asking for bailouts. It is not the NHS workers, the Black people who are working in NHS and in other important organizations. It's not them who are asking for bailout. It is the rich and billionaire who are asking for bailouts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohammed, for that. All of that resonates very, very deeply. Being the daughter of a family that was invited to the United Kingdom as accountants and nurses and teachers, all of that resonates very strongly. I think one of the aspects is that we have a situation with regards to our government, which means that we have a reserved immigration policy, which is not in the complete responsibility of Scotland. And I think that might be different if it wasn't reserved and if it was devolved, but we are where we are with that. It has been sad to see some of the deaths and some of the situations that have happened with regards to asylum seekers here in Scotland. And I hope that resonates with all of the attendees who are on this particular call. I'm just going to very quickly, before I introduce Rosa, just very quickly look at some of the chat. So there are a couple of messages in the chat asking about before COVID-19, what were the key issues that Black and minority ethnic minorities faced. Many people want to increase representation of Black and ethnic minorities. Is representation in public life and in decision making the silver bullet answer to changing things? Charmaine, I apologize for mispronouncing your name. It is Blaze. That's how her name is pronounced. Ewan has put his email address from SUL into the chat as well. And he is unable to take part in the question and answer. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Rosa Salia, who's a trade unionist and a human rights activist. She is part of the Glasgow Girls, and she's going to give an insight into racism in Scotland. Rosa will also share some of her own experiences of campaigning and the importance of collective organising and unionisation, and she'll stress the importance of challenging racist injustices and fighting for a more equal future in Scotland. Rosa.
Hello, thank you for having me. I have been an activist since I was a teenager, so that's all I have known, trying to really bring equality to our society and challenging some of the barriers that ethnic minorities face on a daily basis. Of course, the killing of George Floyd, and let's not forget the death of Sheku Bayo in Scotland, led to the growth of Black Lives Matter. And it became a truly global movement that has shone a light on the levels of inequality that continues to exist. I know Scotland has been amazing in campaigning and fighting racism, but far less good at structural and institutional racism. And I see that on a daily basis because I'm very close with ethnic minorities, and we need to speak about this publicly and be honest with that we have a problem of institutional racism. And unless public bodies are comfortable with the fact that things may not look good in short term, meaningful progress will be harder to achieve. And really, instead, it has been a future as a social, this is a social, economic, and political system of a structure of racism. However, there's been policies developed to make sure that we are achieving a fairer society and an equal society. And that work needs to continue, like the Fair Work and the Race Equality Framework, which was mentioned earlier by a number of the speakers. However, I believe, it's about the beliefs and attitudes of those serving our communities and how those beliefs and attitudes affect their ability to serve everyone in our community fairly. And dismantling structural racism means making sure that those working for our city of Glasgow and in Scotland do not let those biases interfere with their duties. So for example, recruitment is very important, making sure that we are recruiting ethnic minorities and we're setting aside our biases. The organization that they work for often know that minority ethnic people are underrepresented as employees or service users, but do nothing about it. Some of them, or they don't want to try find out why to resolve it. So I believe we're not immune to the institutional of racism. And as you know, the Black Lives Matter, many people thought there was something happening in America. No, it's happening in Scotland. And the foundation is actually comes from slavery and plantation. To more recent one is migrants and Europeans stepping to our shores. And of course, cheap workforces for EU citizens has been accepted by many employers, and that is, as we know, and that they believe, the employers, that, you know, if they lose their job or they complain about that job, then they could get another Eastern European, and it's easy to be replaceable. And these are all issues that is happening with people and ethnic minorities, especially because they are disadvantaged. Most of them are working they are paid, low paid, and there is a huge pay gap between ethnic minorities and Scottish workers. On average, Scottish workers earn 10% more than ethnic minorities. So you can see the inequality there. However, some experiences of kind of racism may differ, and it might not just be about appearances, it could be about stereotypes as well, or someone saying like, oh, where do you come from? You know, I have faced that, where do you come from, all the time. And I think I have to say this undermines the sense of my identity and my belonging. And many people also affected by this or other, they experience differently the racism that they receive. And the structural racism can be dealt with simply by telling people it's wrong to be racist. We have to be really, as a society and through our union, through our equality representation, together, I think collectively, we have to become anti-racist society. That means changing the way we think, making sure that positive action is taken into place, we act upon it, and being prepared to challenge others to do the same, and empowering ethnic minorities and our colleagues, our friends in our society. And recently, of course, I would say asylum seekers are facing a huge disadvantages because they face racism, of course, but they face poverty, they face destitution. And Mohammed went into detail about the treatment of asylum seekers in this country and how immigration system is designed to feel unwelcomed, to feel dehumanizing asylum seekers. And that is something that it's a fight that, you know, has to go on by many activists like Mohammed, myself, and others. And the trade union has been an advocate for migrants' rights and asylum seekers' rights. And we need this unionism, we need this activism, this collectivity, because together we are stronger to achieve equality. And the hostile environment that has been created by the UK government, it's not just for asylum seekers, it goes through people who are trying to settle here, they're trying to get married to someone who's a foreigner, someone's not from Scotland or the UK. So it's the hostile environment is affecting a number of people. Family reunion is the biggest issue. However, in Glasgow, we've seen asylum seekers, 3 deaths of asylum seekers, and that itself speaks for itself. There are issues that needs to be dealt with, and during the lockdown, asylum seekers, their money was actually cut, so they had no access to cash, most of them, and they had no access to, they weren't receiving Section 95, which is basically a living expenses that is paid to them by the Home Office. And the £37 per week has not increased. It is actually very insulting. Recently, the UK government increased it by 26p. So that shows how the UK government is looking towards asylum seekers issues. And in Glasgow, Refugees for Justice, many refugees and asylum seekers have been advocating for an independent inquiry to the deaths of these 3 asylum seekers. And I believe that might happen with collectivism of activism, and the pressure on local groups who've been helping asylum seekers to really come to a conclusion why these deaths actually happen. The Park Inn incident was highlighted in the news, and I think many people kind of wake up to the mental health awareness of asylum seekers. The Migrant Help is an organization that is funded or the only organization is there to help asylum seekers. However, there was a current survey showing that the 5% of their phone calls is answered. That shows really how this organization is helping asylum seekers. I am very critical of the help that they're meant to help asylum seekers. As you know, asylum seekers don't have the right to work in this country or access to resource to public funds. And I think I'm going to show you this booklet, which is recently, I'm reading it, Lift the Ban, and it shows and it tells you we will gain 97.8 million per year if asylum seekers were allowed to work in this country. So that really speaks volume, and it shows that asylum seeker can live in dignity. And they don't need to be dehumanized. They don't need to beg for money. They don't need to be given money. They can actually earn money in a dignified way. I think I'll come to a conclusion here, but in conclusion, I would want to say that together we are joining a trade union and becoming an equality rep actually improves a lot of people's lives in the workplaces, and activism and being involved yourself, try to be the change that you want to be. Someone else cannot make the changes for you. You have to really, if you see something is unequal, you're the only ones actually probably seeing this, and you need to challenge it and you need to speak about it. And thank you for having me. I hope that you enjoyed what I've said.
Thank you, Rosa. We've had quite a wide, broad spectrum of discussion this evening. And I think it's important to bring it back to the impact of COVID-19 on ethnic minority communities. We've had a number of questions in the chat box, which have asked about representation of ethnic minority groups and what potentially are the key issues with regards to moving forward. But I wanted to just to address some of the questions again. I believe it's now time perhaps to move on to the question and answer session. We've got 15 minutes or so, which would be useful for people to engage with some discussion around specific questions about what you've heard, but also importantly, what the impact of COVID-19 has been on ethnic minority communities from your experience. So I'd like to open the floor to that. We have another few questions. Are there any particular, is there anyone that wants to particularly come in at this point?
Thank you, Gozi. I can take a few of the questions I've been monitoring, so I've noted them down, and if I just rattle through them as quickly as possible, and then others can contribute. So the first question we had about Alan about is race working with other equality strands? We are. We saw an example of that today at today's Black Workers Committee meeting, where we met with our counterparts in the Youth Committee. But as our work progresses, particularly around Break the Race Ceiling campaign, we will be engaging with other equality groups as well, because the other strands, because we know that many people who identify as Black and minority ethnic may also be covered by other equality strands, so it's quite important for that intersectional working. We had a few questions from Kathleen and Carmen. So the campaign is called Break the Race Ceiling, and Break the Race Ceiling campaign has a Facebook page, but if you also Google it, you'll also see some of the the publicity around it from the media in particular. Cash, thanks very much for your question. I know this is something that we've discussed before. You should have received information from your trade union, but if not, we can pick up on that later after this call. We was asked a question about how do you encourage Black and minority ethnic co-workers by giving them the confidence and encouragement. I guess there's a few things. The first thing that anyone can do is actually care. I think that goes a long way. So care about your co-workers, care about understanding their needs, their backgrounds, what life is like for them, what life in the workplace is like for them, and try to create that safe space where they are able to feel encouraged and confident to be able to share their views, and note that may be firstly in a BME specific kind of group, and also encourage trade union membership. So I'll just throw that one in there too. There is, in terms of, there was a question, so Claire asked a question around public sector equality duty. I think lots of people, in particular when I'm talking to public sector employers, lots of people in those workplaces actually need to also understand how to utilise the public sector equality duty and why you're doing it. It's not quite a paper tick box exercise. There is actually real meaning behind it. So yes, that's something which I'd like to take away and look at and see how we can work that in through Break the Race Ceiling campaign, to perhaps there is a training action there for people like yourself, Claire, and other workers across the public sector. So thanks for sharing that. Where a public sector employer is not obeying coronavirus guidelines or issuing more specific guidelines, I want to know about it as chair of the STUC Black Workers Committee. I know ministers want to know about it, and I can help communicate that to government. But if we don't know about it and nobody tells us about it, then we can't really do much about it. So please do use the contact details for the STUC to get in touch with the Black Workers Committee, and we will take action. As you've seen from our record, when Waverley care workers needed our help, we were on their side. When Edinburgh students facing racism in schools were needing help, we were on their side. Whether the workforce in East Kilbride for DFID needed our support, we were on their side. And if you need our help, we will be on your side too. So thanks very much, Gozi.
Thank you. And I think it is really important to just maintain and state that, you know, the STUC, we're democratically just elected as a Black Workers Committee. We represent 40 unions and 20 trade councils and over 500,000 employees and workers. So there is, you know, sort of a large body of support available from the Black Workers Committee and the STUC generally in terms of how we try to get equalities. And this is probably the most important time to focus on equality for frontline staff and for frontline workers and families. There are a couple of other items in the web box. There's the stuc.co.uk equalities website, and also the Break the Ceiling website. So please have a look at that. Are there any other questions or comments that people would like to make at this stage?
Yes, Cozy, if it's okay, thank you everybody for staying with us. We still have 38 people on, and just to add to what Usman has said about reaching out to BME community, there's a question about having few BME within the workspace, and how do you become a better ally? I think one of the key things we have to always remember is one human race, and we have to remember the humanity in all of us. And you know, from my personal experiences in some workplaces, not all, because I've had some brilliant experiences and some that's not really you want to repeat. But sometimes you go to work and being the only person looking like yourself, you know, there were times where I was just ignored. You know, people wouldn't even speak to me unless there is work related. So a part of reaching out to BMEs is reaching out to them. If they are part of the union and you're a union, a shop steward, or invite them to sessions, invite them to a networking session, you know, reach out to people, because sometimes that is the block, because we think, okay, this person looks different to me, I'm not too sure how to approach them. Think about your humanity. There's a commonality with how we communicate with each other. We all like to be accepted, to be loved, to be heard, to be listened to in a compassionate way. And think about those principles and don't look only at the differences. Look at what's common and find a way to build a bridge to meeting someone that you would normally not interact with or have, you know, let's go for a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, you know, simple things that we could do, simple acts of kindness that we could do to reach out to each other that makes a difference. And also what Rosa was saying about speaking out against things that is not really acceptable. Many times you might find someone say something that's unacceptable, but you may feel a bit, because it's only you that might potentially say something, and that there might be a kickback and there might be an impact on your social circle that you may not want to say anything or go against the grain. But it's important to be brave and be courageous and say, hang on, what phrase did you call her? I don't think it's acceptable to say that anymore. We normally say it like this and this and this, you know, or even ask, how do you prefer, you know, ask questions, you know, and those are some of the things we are uncomfortable to do, you know. One person in the workplace said for Black History Month, what they did is they had like BME staff and you know, the majority staff coming up with questions that you always wanted to ask, but you felt uncomfortable to ask, and having a safe space for both parties to ask questions and to make it known that, you know, it's not about hate or it's just about sometimes not having that information or that level of confidence or comfort to step out.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much. There are a number of sort of themes that we've touched on, but I would like to, you know, I think that Charmaine has summarized some aspects quite succinctly. I think it is important that as BME workers, that we are able to have confidence and reassurance during this time. This year has been like no other, and ethnic minority people have been disproportionately affected by the consequences of COVID-19. And we need to ensure that we have allies within our wider networks that are able to articulate what we have been saying for several years, for many generations. And importantly, I think it's important to realize that the importance and significance of organizing and being a trade unionist to some extent, to at least the minimal extent of being just a regular member. But within the Black Workers Committee, we will be pushing majorly to make sure that our Black workers are aware of the benefits of being a member of a union. These are not easy times, and we have to get through them as best as we can. And it's absolutely imperative that we have some kind of clear solidarity about how we navigate this particular period of time, and we stand beside all of you in terms of doing that. Usman, myself, and the other Black Workers Committee's members, we're an open door with regards to that. We have the support of the STUC, and we have the support and collaboration of the other equality committees as well. And we have to build our resilience to tackle systemic racism. And that is a vital point, and it's crucial to strike now while the iron is hot. On that note, I feel that if there are no other comments or questions, I can't see anything coming in.
Sorry, Goji, yeah, there is. So Cash has come back in with another further question around the public sector, as is someone else, around how we get accountability within the public sector. One thing I'd say is what we're doing with Break the Race Ceiling is not dividing up various sectors and making subgroups. We are targeting one sector as a whole, so the whole of the Scottish public sector, the 150 employers that are identified as being part of the Scottish public sector are being targeted. Well, they're being. We are speaking to them at once as part of the campaign. We're asking them all the same questions. We're asking them for data and information. And then once we've analysed that, we can work with those 150 employers to plan next steps. But part of that is when we get the bird's eye view picture, which I believe has never been done before, we'll know where some of the challenges lie. And already I can see that there is huge good practice out there, that there is public sector employers out there who are demonstrating good practice, and that needs to be highlighted, just as those that may be falling a bit short on things. But trust me, this committee and I as chair give this commitment to all of Scotland's Black and minority ethnic workers. I have seen the struggles of previous chairs and previous generations who I know have set such a high standard for me to follow in leading this committee, and we owe so much to them, and I just want to put on record my gratitude to them for showing us the way and never giving up. But we are now taking on that fight, and it is a fight that we will win, that we must win, for that equal and just Scotland. Thank you.
Thank you, Usman. And Usman has done a fantastic job of chairing the Black Workers Committee over this period of time. And I think it's important that we try and celebrate as well our diversity in Scotland. So where we do know there are challenges, where we do know that there is still discrimination, we need to realise that we all do live together in this small little part of the north of the United Kingdom. And a lot of us actually do enjoy it for a good percentage of the time. But the struggle continues. The struggle continues. And let's make sure that we have a positive approach to that and a collaborative approach, and know that the trade union movement is behind all of you at every step of the way. And we're all doing this from a volunteering perspective. Most of us are not getting paid. We are not paid officers. So it's important that every minute of our time is as valuable as possible with regards to this. Coming out of this pandemic, coming out of the inequality, that is been quite obvious with regards to ethnic minority communities, challenging some of the aspects of crisis and death that have happened with regards to some of our asylum seekers, continually challenging those aspects, I think, are where our priorities lie. And the trade union movement is 100% behind all of you. I'd like to thank all of you this evening. Thank you so much. Amandla, solidarity. I hope to see you all again. It would be nice to get some feedback from you all, just with regards to the content of this evening and your general perception of going forwards. It would be nice to perhaps hear one or two calls to action that the Black Workers Committee can take forward and put into our work plan. Our work plan rolls from year to year, and it contains many of these aspects, but these are new times, so it would be of real value to have your input to create something that's, how can I say, the new normal.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Good evening.
Good evening.